Look at her. She's so cute. Oh, a little pigeon. So I just found this book in my mom's storage unit. It has 300 craft projects with tutorials and templates. So naturally, I decided to go on a little side quest and make every single one of them. Hi, my name is Penelope and I am the owner of Casa 184. I started Casa during the pandemic, just as a way to make more art, basically. I wanted to separate all of my art mediums because I do consider myself an interdisciplinary artist. Casa 184 is a nice little corner of the internet for me. It is where I can share my art, and I sell jewelry, and I really want it to just be not only a store but a resource where people can learn more art, where I can share any skills or products or knowledge that have helped me. And when I am not making stuff for Casa, I am probably touring with a band or an artist as their photographer, videographer, merchandise manager, personal assistant. But when I tour, I am required to travel like a month or two at a time, and then I come home for a few days, maybe a few weeks, and then I have to go back out again. But lately I've really enjoyed nesting, and I've really enjoyed bonding with my dog and staying here and doing a lot of art. So I figured I would just make content for myself, which brings me back to this book. Full disclosure, my mom might have hoarding tendencies, and I definitely have a phone addiction. So I figured this would be a great way to combat both. We have a bunch of art supplies that we need to use, and I need new hobbies. My goal is to make it, rate it, and then document everything here for you guys. Okay, maybe not for you guys because I'm really just documenting it as a way to hold myself accountable, but I figured we can all go on this journey together. I will make the sacrifice, twist my arm if you will. I will make more art. Hopefully I won't have mental breakdowns over a craft book. Okay, so here's how I'm going to be rating them. Is it accessible? Is it affordable? Is it accurate? And then lastly, the difficulty rating, which won't affect its overall rating, but I think it's good to know what we're getting into, you know? Is it accessible? Can you do it on the weekend without having planned for it? Can you do it without having any skills regarding this niche of artwork? Is it affordable? Can you do it at home with recycled items or things that you probably already own? Or do you have to go out and spend $40 on a craft that you might not even enjoy at the end of the day? Was it accurate? Was I able to follow the instructions and get a beautiful piece of art at the end? Or did I have a mental breakdown and have to Google something every step of the way? And lastly, the difficulty one. Again, this one isn't necessarily to affect its overall rating. It is simply to know how sweaty of a crafter are you going to have to be. First things first, and I need you to listen to me when I say this, like really listen. Read the instructions, like really read them multiple times and take notes. Believe me when I say that our reading skills have disappeared, I think. Especially for me, I think that because of my phone/TikTok addiction, my reading skills, for instructions at least, have really just gone out the window. I will read everything, or at least I think I do, but I'm not actually processing that information. I think that I'm probably just thinking about other things, and I'm not actually being mindful and present with the task that I am in front of. So please don't make the same mistakes that I do. And if you are a victim of this as well, then let's try and change that, because it's kind of embarrassing. And to start us off, I chose a paper mache frame. I am Mexican, so I grew up making paper mache art, and I have a mom who is very knowledgeable in this, and I have all of the tools that I need for this. So I figured this is going to be a super easy option with no real effects to my mental health. Negative ones at least. Okay, a little disclaimer about this little side quest is that I will be changing some of the materials and the instructions because, like I said, I want to just use what I already own and hopefully not have to buy anything. But if I don't own something and I have to buy it, I will obviously do that. Because of that, I am going to share the original book spread with the instructions and the photos that they provided, but then I'm also going to include my list of materials and equipment and the instructions that I kind of made along the way. So now that we have read and understood all of the instructions, we have our notes, we've rearranged the instructions to better fit our needs, whatever it is that you need to do, now we can get started. So for the piece of cardboard that the instructions call for, I'm going to use this box. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm just gonna cut it open, and I think I'm just gonna end up using one of these sides, and then I'll save the rest of the cardboard for a different project. Jail time. Jail. Straight to jail. Thank you. Before I do anything on the cardboard, I'm going to sketch out my template on my notebook first, because the one that they provided has little information, so I'm going to have to figure it out on my own. I'm going to start by taking the measurements of the art print that I intend to use in the frame. I decided to go with a 1-inch border, and after some math, this is what my measurements in my template look like. The solid line is what I need to cut, and the dashed is what needs to be scored. Now I'm just going to copy these measurements onto my cardboard using a ruler and my pencil. I'm going to be very careful so that I can make these lines as straight as I can. I'm going to place my cutting mat under my cardboard to make sure that when I cut through, I don't damage whatever surface I'm using. Then I'm going to cut the middle part first and save that for later. Now I'm going to cut the outer parts, and this will make it a little bit easier to handle. Okay, that was harder than I thought it was going to be. My spirits are low. The instructions in the book were unfortunately not as easy or accessible as they presented to be. But that's okay, we figured it out. Once that is cut, I can go ahead and start scoring the parts that I'll be folding in. Be careful not to cut through, just score. Once everything is scored, I'm going to fold in the sides and tape them together. Make sure that you also tape the corners that have a hole in them. So I just finished taping it up. This is what it looks like. In hindsight, I wish I would have made it a little bigger, I think. Like, instead of 1 inch, maybe 1.5. But I think that I think that it'll be fine, because once we add the paper mache and everything, I think that we might be able to tweak it just a little bit. But it's good to know. I learned a lot from making this little thing. So this next part is a little bit of an experiment. I don't know if it'll work, but the instructions said to use wire so that you can hang this up, and I just don't have the right type of wire. The one that I have is way too weak. So instead I'm going to use a soda tap, because I had a little Dr. Pepper the other day. For this part, you can use your hands or some pliers. All you want to do is bend the soda tap just a little bit so that it can go on the wall. It doesn't need to be at a 90-degree angle. It just needs to be bent a little bit so that it can go on a nail. Then you're going to tape it down, and make sure that you're securing it by taping it all the way around. Alright, so up next is to make the little motifs that go around the frame. The book said to use air-dried clay, but I don't own any. I guess the idea is that you can just kind of blend it into the frame without gluing it. I've never worked with air-dried clay, so I don't know if that would actually work. But I do have a bunch of polymer clay that I use for my small business. One thing about polymer clay is that you have to bake it in an oven, so you have to keep that in mind. I keep a designated baking tray just for my polymer clay. I decided to put little stars around my frame. I'm going to start by grabbing a small amount of clay and rolling it up into a ball. Once I have that, I'm going to pinch the sides until I get the amount of points that I want for my star, which is 5. I'm going to keep sculpting this until the star takes its shape, and then I'm going to smooth everything out with my fingers. I want my star to be a little softer and rounded, not super pointy, so I'm taking my time with this. Now that I've finished all of my stars, I'm going to place them on the frame to make sure that they look pretty uniform and to fix any that are looking a little wonky. I'm pretty happy with how everything looks, so I'm going to put these in the oven. While that's baking, I'm going to start cutting up my paper for the paper mache, and I'm going to do small squares and rectangles. It is now the next day. I finished the first layer of the paper mache, and I don't love it, I'll be honest. Okay, so this is where I went wrong. I had opted to tape the stars onto the frame, but I was extremely sloppy with it. As you can see, there are little lines of tape going through them. When I started to apply my paper mache, you could see every little line, and I hated it. I also was not able to fix the 1-inch width of the frame like I thought I would be able to. I was applying too much paper at a time trying to fix my mistakes, and it was just looking pretty rough. This is what it looked like the next morning once it dried. I was not happy with how it looked, so I just decided to remake the frame altogether. So a few things I did differently in this frame was to keep the backing on it. So I did cut it out so that I could fold in the borders, but I just went ahead and taped it right back on there. And then what I also did was tape the whole frame basically, except for the back because I don't really care about the back. But this way it's going to be a little bit more consistent when I'm putting down the paper mache. There's not going to be as many ridges. I mean, there's still going to be ridges, but there's not going to be as many, and I think that it's just going to look a little bit cleaner overall. Another thing I'm doing differently this time is to use a hot glue gun to put the stars on the frame. I'm going to map out the stars first so that they're evenly spaced out, and then I'm going to take a little bit of glue on the back of the stars and glue them directly onto the frame. Once they're all glued, I'm going to hold up my frame to make sure that everything is evenly spaced out and that it looks good. Don't worry if you made a mistake though, you can easily remove the star after gluing and try again. Once those are glued on, it's time to start the paper mache process. I need to make my wallpaper paste, and I just found some recipes on YouTube. I'm going to take a little bit of cornstarch onto a hot pan and slowly start to add water and mixing nonstop until the cornstarch dissolves. Once it looks like this gel, it's ready to go. Once you have that paste done, you want to get started pretty fast before it dries. I'm dipping my paper into the paste and then placing it onto my frame. Take this slow, one layer at a time, and let it dry as much as you can before doing another layer. Use your brush to push the paper down so that there aren't any air bubbles as well. Alright, so it's been a few days. I've let this dry for about 2 days now, and it's finally ready to get painted. Like I had said before, I decided to do it all over again because truly I was really sloppy with the first one that I did. I did not glue the stars down correctly. I wanted to be lazy, and it really bit me in the butt. So here we are, and honestly I'm so glad that I started over again because this one looks so much better already. Alright, so now we're gonna paint, but first I just want to share a little bit of a tip. Whenever I paint, I always use these little like silicone liners for like cupcakes or muffins or whatever you want to call them, and I just pour directly into them, and then that's how I make my own paint mixtures. Or I will just use it as like a palette, because then I can put them in a little like plastic container, seal it, and they stay pretty fresh. And also they're so easy to clean up. Like I just let them dry for a day, and the next day I can just peel it off, throw it in the trash. It's just a little tip, and that's what I'm going to do today. So I have a bunch of these colors for like, these are really old paints. I hope that they work. And I do have an idea of the colors that I want to use. This is what I kind of sketched up on my computer. I'm going to have this here as a reference photo so that I can make sure that the colors are going to look good. And yeah, hopefully it looks good. So, what do we think? I'm personally in love with it. Honestly, that wasn't so bad. It wasn't perfect, and I got maybe frustrated once, but overall, it was pretty simple. Side note, I unfortunately ruined the original art piece by getting paint on it, so I ended up using my evil pigeon, which honestly looks so much better anyway. I will say, I think I underestimated the paper mache aspect of it. I think that I haven't done it in a while, and I just forgot how time consuming waiting for layers to dry would be, and it did allow me to practice patience, so a win is a win, I guess. In total, it took me about 5 days, I would say, just in between the paper mache layers and then the painting layers and the sealant. So you can't do it over the weekend necessarily, but you'll be able to start it on the weekend and then maybe find 30-40 minutes in between each day throughout the week until you finish it. Alright, now for the ratings. Was it accessible? So the template that they provided at the end of the book was like this big, and then you had to scale it up to size. So in order to scale anything, you have to have a scanner or a projector, which doesn't make this project accessible, if you want to follow the instructions in the book at least. It also didn't tell you how you would be able to scale it by hand, like the measurements by hand. It didn't provide any information, honestly. So you would just have to do the math on your own, which is not a big deal, but I think that that is something that they could have added. I don't think that it would have taken up like a bunch of space on the page. So it was a little disappointing, I would say. But the materials are accessible. You can just use recycled items. You can make your own wallpaper paste, and that kind of just makes it a little bit easier. So I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Was it affordable? For me, it was free. I was able to find replacements for everything that I didn't already own, and it didn't affect the overall project. I think that if you craft, you probably have most of these things already, and if not, this may cost you like $10 to $20. I do think it's relatively affordable though, so maybe like an 8 or 9 out of 10. Was it accurate? The general idea of the steps that you had to take, yes, but the details that needed to go into those steps, I'm not convinced, honestly. So I'll give it grace because it was such an easy project and I was able to just figure it out, and I didn't Google anything, which is good. I'll give it like a 5 or 6 out of 10 maybe. Was it difficult? No. You had to be patient and you needed to have like a little bit of attention to detail. But no, it wasn't difficult at all, so I'll give it an 8 out of 10 on the difficulty scale. So overall, I think I would give it like a 7 out of 10. I was kind of annoyed at the whole like template that they provided, because that's the whole point of this book. They're promoting that it has all these photos and templates and resources, but then the things that they provided you with are trash. Sorry. Still, I had so much fun making this. I am just glad that I was able to make such a cute frame for 0 money. And my little evil pigeon now has a little frame. And yeah, thank you for coming along on this journey with me. This was really uncomfortable and I hated every minute of being in front of the camera. But I did it anyway, and I survived, and I hope that I continue to do it. And if I don't, please bully and harass me until I do. Follow me on TikTok or Instagram if you want to keep up with my shenanigans, or if you want to keep up with Amy. I think I'm going to start like polls to see what you guys are interested in, or for you guys to vote on what my next craft is if I can't make up my mind. I encourage you to bully and harass me into being a better version of myself, and I look forward to the next one. Bye!